For 8 centuries, the galaxy had been trapped in a 3-part harmony of despair. It was not a peace, but a perpetual, grinding stalemate. A cosmic engine fueled by ancient grudges and endless, ritualized war. 3 titans held the known space in a brutal, unchanging equilibrium. From their citadels of crystallized light floating in the silent void, the Zephyrian Empire dispensed cold, paternalistic judgment, viewing all younger species as children needing their eternal guidance. The Corvan Federation spread like a chitinous cancer across the outer rim, a billion insectoid minds welded into a single, ravenous hive that consumed worlds for fuel and enslaved populations for labor. And threading through the territories of both, the Nexari Collective moved, a civilization of tentacled merchants and liquid-filled tanks. Their economy a predatory organism that profited from scarcity, conflict, and dependence. This was the galaxy's old order. A trinity of control so entrenched, so absolute, that to the trillions living under its shadow, it seemed as immutable as gravity itself. Until humanity, ignorant and uninvited, stumbled onto the stage and set the script ablaze. Like, subscribe, share, and comment below to join humanity's fight for a new galaxy. The catalyst was not a declaration, but a mistake, a predator's miscalculation. High Commander Zether of the Corvan Third Fleet felt the Hive Will's directive as a physical itch in his exoskeleton. His warships needed resupply. Long-range scouts had found a solution. A quiet, blue-green world orbiting an unremarkable yellow star. Its inhabitants were pre-FTL, their largest orbital constructs mere tin cans strung together with primitive alloys. They burned dead organic matter for energy and communicated with modulated radio waves. They were not even a civilization by galactic standards. They were a resource node. Zether's mandibles clicked in anticipation. This would be a harvesting operation, not a battle. A swift, clean excision of biomass and minerals. 12 Corvan sickle ships, each a half-mile of scarred, organic-looking armor and pulsating plasma conduits, translated into the system's edge. They moved with the flawless, synchronized menace of a school of piranhas, a testament to the Hive Will's absolute control. On Earth, the shriek of new, impossible signatures on deep space radar was the sound of a peaceful future dying in its cradle. On the bridge of the U.S. Defiance, Earth's newest and proudest battleship, Captain Sarah Morrison watched the tactical plot solidify with a cold dread that quickly hardened into resolve. The unknowns were massive, outnumbering Earth's entire defensive line of 8 vessels. Battle stations. Form the bulwark around Station Alpha, she ordered, her voice cutting through the static of fear on the comms. We hold the line here. Nothing gets through to the planet. The human ships were lean, angular things, built with a brutalist practicality. Titanium alloy armor, roaring nuclear thermal engines, and massive railgun batteries that were their only claim to parity. They were children's first crude swords against seasoned executioners' axes. Zether observed their defensive scramble with detached amusement through the shared sensorium of the hive. Look at them. His thought pulse echoed to his fleet. They arranged themselves like ceremonial guards. How quaint. Erase them. The Corvan line erupted. Lances of star-hot plasma, capable of slagging continental plates, streaked across the void. They were weapons of terror and absolute certainty, designed to end fights before they began. But the human ships did not vaporize. They moved. It was not a coordinated tactical withdrawal. It was a violent, physics-defying scattering. The Defiance and her sisters executed acceleration burns that should have turned their crews to paste, their new inertial dampening systems screaming in protest. They used microthrusters to flip and spin, presenting minimal profiles, using the planet's own gravity well as a slingshot. The plasma beams tore through empty space where they should have been dot on the Defiance. Morrison's knuckles were white on her command chair. They fight like a single organism, her tactical officer yelled. Predictable. Then we be unpredictable, Morrison snarled. All ships break to individual engagement protocols. Wolfpack Pattern Delta. Target the lead vessel's power signature. Railguns, full salvo. Fire! What answered was not the elegant, silent beam of energy weapons, but the brutal, mechanical thrum of magnetic coils discharging. Dozens of tungsten ferrite slugs, each the size of a ground car, were hurled into the void at a significant fraction of light speed. They were primitive, brute-force projectiles in a galaxy of shimmering energy. They struck the lead Corvin ship not with an energy transfer, but with a kinetic cataclysm. The dense slugs punched through the organic armor as if it were rotted wood, exiting the far side in geysers of molten debris and atmosphere. The alien vessel convulsed once, then silently came apart, its internal structure shattered. The shared shock that reverberated through the Corvin hive was a novel, terrifying sensation. Impossible. Concentrate fire. Swarm them. Zether's command was a ripple of panic. But the humans were already gone, splitting into smaller, faster groups, harrying the flanks. They fought with a terrifying, decentralized chaos. Each captain was improvising, yet their actions dovetailed with an eerie, synergistic precision. One ship, the US Courage, dove straight at a Corvin vessel, drawing its fire, while two others pummeled it from the sides. Morrison saw her opening. The Corvin flagship, Zether's own command, had overcommitted, trying to reestablish order. Defiance, full burn. Straight down its throat. Load nuclear-tipped javelins. Stand by for close-range detonation. Captain, the blast radius. I know the math, Lieutenant. Do it. The Defiance became a dart of vengeful steel. It weathered glancing plasma hits that scorched its armor black, shuddering under the impacts but holding together. At point-blank range, it unleashed its entire payload of missiles and veered away on a crushing emergency burn. The nuclear fireball bloomed behind it, a miniature sun that engulfed the Corvin flagship. When the light faded, the mighty alien ship was a cracked, burning husk, venting its life into the vacuum in under an hour. The pristine Corvin fleet was a graveyard of 11 shattered hulks. The 12th fled, crippled. Zether himself was retrieved, floating in a life pod, his psychic link to the hive a screaming chorus of disbelief and rage. He was brought aboard the Defiance not to a trophy room, but to a stark interrogation chamber. Captain Morrison stood before him, her uniform smudged with soot, her eyes holding the flat, exhausted calm of someone who has stared into the abyss and found it wanting. "You speak," she observed, hearing the translation device were to life. "The hive learns. It adapts." Zether clicked, his compound eyes taking in the sterile, functional human design. "Your victory is an anomaly, a statistical error. The Federation will correct it." "You came to our home," Morrison said, her voice low and deadly. "You fired on our ships without warning, without provocation. You thought we were weak. You were wrong." She stepped closer. "You are going to take a message back to your hive will. Earth is not a resource. It is not a slave pool. It is sovereign territory. The next time you send ships, send diplomats. If you send warriors, we will not stop at destroying them. We will find the nest they came from, and we will return the favor 1,000-fold. Do you understand the consequences?" Zether felt a tremor in his exoskeleton that had nothing to do with the ship's engines. It was the tremor of a paradigm shattering. This was not the fear-driven defiance of a cornered prey animal. This was the cold promise of a new predator. "You are one world. We are thousands. Your defiance is suicide." Morrison allowed herself a thin, humorless smile. "You just fought a fleet built with 5-year-old technology. You have no idea what we're building right now, or how fast we learn." She leaned in. "One more thing. Humans have a long, long memory for those who harm our own. And we hold a grudge like the universe holds dark matter. Now get off my ship." 3 days later, a Corvin patrol scooped up Zether's pod. His debriefing, a torrent of psychic data and sensor logs, did not just shock the Federation High Command. It sent seismic tremors through the very foundations of the old order. In the Zephyrian Empire's crystalline citadel, Emperor Luxandra, a being of contained stellar energy, pulsed with intellectual curiosity as the reports filtered in. A species that defeats Corvin kinetics with kinetic force? How inelegant and how effective. Their potential for controlled aggression must be assessed. Perhaps they can be guided into useful service. In the opulent, liquid-filled trading halls of the Nexary Collective, Trade Prince Sex Mora watched the commodity forecasts shift. A new industrial power with a demonstrated martial capability, he mused, his tentacles weaving complex profit/loss equations in the nutrient fluid. They will need resources. They will create markets. And they will have enemies who need weapons. The opportunities are substantial. But in the dark, resonant chambers of the Corvin hive the reaction was a pure, undiluted fury that vibrated through a billion connected minds. The insult was not the loss of ships, but the blow to their existential certainty. A lesser species had not just fought back. It had innovated in the midst of combat. It had thought independently. This was a virus, not a military threat. It had to be sterilized, utterly and completely. On Earth, in the pressurized conference rooms of Luna Command, the mood was grimly triumphant. Captain Morrison, now Admiral Morrison, stood before a holographic assembly of Earth's leaders. "The report is confirmed," she said, her image flickering above a dozen capitals. "We are not alone. The good news, we can defend ourselves. The bad news, we've just introduced ourselves to a neighborhood where the other residents have been practicing gang warfare for longer than we've had written language." Admiral Chun, a legend with a face like weathered granite, stepped forward. "The time for hiding is past. The decision has been made. We will not be a protectorate. We will not be a client species. We will be a sovereign power. And that means we step out into their galaxy, and we make them understand the new rules." The first to arrive, drawn by curiosity and opportunity, were the Zephyrians. Their ship descended not with the violent thrust of rockets, but with the silent, impossible grace of controlled gravity, a sculpture of solidified light. Ambassador Velter materialized in the United Nations reception hall, a humanoid shape of shimmering azure and white energy, his voice a harmonic resonance that seemed to emanate from the air itself. "Greetings, people of Earth." The tones vibrated. "We come as guardians. The galaxy is perilous for nascent civilizations. The Zephyrian Empire offers the shelter of its wisdom and the strength of its fleets. In return, we ask only for your loyalty and the integration of your unique martial spirit into our greater design." President Martinez kept his composure, but the translation of lesser species hung in the air like a poison. "We appreciate your offer, Ambassador, but humanity has always been wary of guardians who define the terms of our protection. You misunderstand," Velter pulsed, a hint of patronizing warmth in his frequency. "Without structure, chaos reigns. Your victory was fortunate, but the Corvin will return with forces you cannot comprehend. Align with us. Let your industry serve the greater galactic good. In time, you may even earn a measure of autonomy." Before the debate could deepen, the alarms sounded again. This time it was the Nexary. Their flotilla was a dazzling, garish parade of organic-looking vessels, hulls shimmering with advertisement holos in a dozen alien scripts. Trade Prince Sex Mura's translucent form appeared in a tank of amber fluid. "Congratulations on your entrepreneurial success," his translator boomed with forced joviality. "The collective sees great potential. We offer exclusive trade packs, advanced materials, drive technologies, luxury goods, in exchange for modest resource allocations and non-exclusive labor agreements. A partnership for mutual prosperity." As teams of human economists and xenologists pored over the Nexary contracts, their faces grew pale. "It's a debt spiral wrapped in a monopoly," Dr. Elena Vasquez, head of Xenocultural Studies, whispered to Morrison. Clause upon clause that would make us eternally dependent, selling them what we make at their prices, using their shipping lanes. It's economic vampirism. President Martinez felt the walls closing in. The Zephyrians offered a gilded cage of subservience. The Nexari offered velvet chains of debt. Both assumed humanity's only value was what could be extracted from it. Then the third contact came, not with offers or contracts, but with a declaration of annihilation. A ship simply appeared at the edge of the solar system, blotting out stars. It was a Terra-class planetbreaker, a mountain of black chitin and glowing weapon nodes. Its message was short, a raw digital scream of hate. Surrender or be erased. The Hive remembers. The Hive retaliates. On the bridge of the Defiance, now refitted and scarred, Morrison looked at the monstrous signature. This was no scout fleet. This was the mailed fist of the Corvin's rage. Admiral, her tactical officer said, voice tight. The new ships, they're still in space dock. We have 12 vessels against that. The math doesn't work. Then we change the math, Morrison said, her mind racing. They couldn't outgun it. They couldn't outlast it. But perhaps they could outthink it. The Corvin fought as one mind. Predictable. She activated the fleet-wide channel. All captains, listen closely. We're executing Plan Crazy. Plan Crazy was not in any tactical manual. It was a philosophy. When faced with an enemy that operates on perfect, centralized logic, become perfectly, beautifully irrational. The human fleet didn't form a line. It became a swarm of angry hornets. Ships shot off in seemingly random vectors, using the planets and moons as gravitational baffles. They fired not to destroy, but to probe, to irritate, launching spreads of missiles that forced the massive Corvin ship to constantly reorient its formidable shields. The terror of the void unleashed hell. Particle beams that could core asteroids sliced through space. They clipped a human frigate, shearing off its engine nacelle. Another took a direct hit to its forward section. Going dark, Morrison watched, her heart a stone in her chest. They're focusing on the outliers. Good. Defiance and courage, with me. We're going down its throat. Again. But this time we aim for the weapon conduits. Draw its fire. Everything else hit its sensor arrays. Blind it. It was a suicidal ballet. The three ships dove through a storm of plasma, their point defense guns swatting aside smaller projectiles. Armor boiled away. Alarms shrieked. The Courage vanished in a silent flash, its crew gone. But the Defiance and her remaining sister pressed on. At point-blank range, they emptied their railgun magazines into the clustered weapon nodes along the Terror's spine. The high-velocity slugs didn't penetrate the main hull, but they smashed the delicate emitters and power relays. The massive ship's furious barrage stuttered, then died in several sectors. It was wounded, confused. Now! Morrison yelled. All remaining ships, full spread on the engine signatures. Give them everything. The coordinated salvo from the surviving human vessels struck the Terror's thrusters. The resulting explosions weren't catastrophic, but they were critical. The behemoth began to drift, its vector uncontrolled. A new, furious message blared. Withdrawal. This is not defeat. This is a strategic recalibration. The Corvin supership, humiliated and hobbled, limped into a hyperspace wake, leaving behind the shattered wreckage of human courage. In the sudden, ringing silence, Morrison slumped in her chair, the adrenaline crash leaving her trembling. They had won. Again. But the cost was etched in the void. 3 ships lost, hundreds of lives extinguished. Earth's fleet was now 7 ships strong against a galaxy of empires. The main viewer flickered, not with 1 alien face but 3. Ambassador Velter, his energy flickering with recalculated interest. Trade Prince Sex Mura, his tentacles twitching with recalculated greed. And the burning, hate-filled ocular sensors of the Corvin War Leader Prime. Admiral Morrison, Velter intoned. Your resilience compels a revised proposal. Perhaps an alliance of relative equals could be negotiated. The collective can offer most favored species status. Sex Mura added quickly. The Corvin's voice was a raw scrape of hatred. You have won a skirmish. You face an eternity of war. Morrison looked at the triumvirate of galactic power, the paternalist, the profiteer, and the predator. She saw not strength, but something new, a flicker of fear. Fear of the unpredictable. Fear of the idea she represented. She straightened her uniform, met each of their gazes in turn, and delivered the verdict of a species that had just found its place in the cosmos. You all seem to be laboring under the same misconception, she said, her voice clear and cold in the quiet bridge. You think we want a seat at your table. You think we want to be your soldiers, your customers, or even your primary enemy. She allowed the ghost of a smile, the one that didn't reach her eyes. We don't. We want to build our own table. And if your ancient, rotting empires get in our way, we'll show you just how creative we can be with the wreckage. She cut the transmission, leaving the three most powerful beings in the local galaxy staring at empty space, the echo of a declaration of independence that threatened to unravel everything they had built over 800 long, stagnant years. The game hadn't just changed. The board had been flipped over. The echo of Admiral Morrison's declaration did not fade. It resonated, a seismic tremor propagating through the calcified strata of galactic politics. On Earth, the aftermath of the Second Battle was not a victory parade, but a planet holding its breath, its people united by a shared, galvanizing terror. The holographic memorial for the crews of the Courage, the Endurance, and the Shangri-La shimmered over every city square, a constellation of lost lives that had purchased a sliver of time. In the warrens of Luna Command, the atmosphere had shifted from defensive panic to a feverish, focused urgency. The old dream of peaceful exploration was dead, incinerated in the plasma fires of the terror of the void. A new dream was being forged in its place. Not just survival, but sovereignty. Captain Marcus Rodriguez, recently of the frigate USS Sparrowhawk, now found himself in a cavernous, newly excavated hangar deep within the lunar regolith. The smell was a unique cocktail of ozone, molten metal, and cold rock. Before him, skeletal in its cradle, was the UES Indomitable. It was a next-generation hunter-killer, its design a radical departure from the blocky Defiance class. Its lines were predatory, a blend of stolen Corvin biosignatures, reverse-engineered Zephyrian energy channeling, and raw human ingenuity. Its primary weapon wasn't just a bigger railgun. It was a magnetic induction cannon that could fire a stream of hyperdense projectiles in a sustained burst, a metallic sandblaster designed to flay alien armor. She's beautiful, in a terrifying sort of way, said Dr. Elena Vasquez, appearing beside him, a data slate glowing in her hands. Her eyes, once bright with purely academic curiosity, now held the sharp glint of a wartime engineer. Will she work? Rodriguez asked, his voice flat. He'd seen beautiful ships turn into coffins. Theoretically, the Zephyrian energy diffusion layer should bleed off plasma hits. The Corvin-derived sensor suite gives us a 400% increase in tracking resolution. And the Nexary composite alloys in the hull. She tapped the slate. They're trading them to us at a friendship rate, which is only triple the market value. They think they're creating a lucrative dependency. They don't realize we're scanning every gram with electron microscopes and figuring out how to synthesize it. That was the new human methodology. Absorb, adapt, improve. While the galactic powers hoarded knowledge as a commodity, humanity treated it as open-source code. But Admiral Chun, overseeing the project from a gantry above, new technology alone wasn't the answer. Ships are tools, Captain. Her voice crackled over the calm. It's the mind wielding them that wins wars. The Corvin have a hive mind. We need something better. We need a hive heart. A shared purpose, not a shared consciousness. The first test of this philosophy was not a fleet battle, but a scalpel strike. Intelligence, pieced together from debris scans and the panicked broadcasts of Corvin supply ships, had identified a critical convoy, 30 bulk freighters carrying refined deuterium and rare earth minerals, escorted by 12 Corvin Razor-class destroyers. It was fuel for the war machine grinding toward Earth. Rodriguez's mission with the Indomitable was simple: break the chain. A single ship against 42? His weapons officer had breathed when the orders came down. Not a ship, Rodriguez had corrected, a cold plan crystallizing in his mind. A catalyst. The operation, later filed as Broken Chain, would become a case study in asymmetric warfare. The Indomitable did not charge the convoy. It limped into sensor range, broadcasting a distress signal on old Earth frequencies, its superior energy layer flickering erratically to mimic catastrophic damage. To the Corvin hive will, it was a wounded animal ripe for capture and dissection. The Razor-class destroyers broke formation with perfect, predatory synchronicity, moving to envelop the seemingly helpless human vessel. All stop. Let them come, Rodriguez ordered, his voice calm. Deploy the chaff. What the Corvin sensors registered as hull fragments and debris were 40 human beings in Mark III-powered assault armor. Their suits matte black and bristling with mag clamps, shaped plasma cutters, and compact fusion charges. They were Marines, but of a breed never before seen in space warfare. Void jumpers. Lieutenant Sarah Kim, leading Alpha Team, felt the weird silence of the suit's internal dampeners as she was jettisoned into the freezing dark. The stars were impossibly bright, the bulk of a Corvin destroyer blotting them out as it loomed closer, a landscape of chitinous plates and pulsing bioluminescent conduits. This was insanity. Infantry boarding actions in the depths of space? It was a tactic from the Age of Sail, resurrected with thermonuclear teeth. Maglocks active. Touchdown in 3, 2, 1. A soft clunk reverberated through her skeleton. She was a barnacle on a leviathan. Alpha on the hull. Cut us a door. The plasma cutters flared, carving through the alien organic metal in showers of sparks. The Corvin ship had no concept of internal security against boarders. Why would it? Ship-to-ship combat was an exchange of energy at thousands of kilometers. The void jumpers poured into maintenance conduits and arterial hallways, moving with rehearsed precision. Inside, the environment was a nightmare of biological machinery. Pulsing membranes, acidic air, and the constant, subaudible hum of the hive will. Corvin worker drones, armed only with claws, scuttled toward the breach. They were met with controlled bursts of tungsten carbide flechettes and focused microwave pulses that cooked their neural clusters. Kim's team fought not to conquer, but to cripple. They planted shaped charges on power relays, data conduits, and the strange, ganglia-like nodes that seemed to be neural junctions for the ship systems. Engine room secured. Primary charge set. 45 seconds to synchronized detonation. Across all 12 destroyers, similar reports filtered in. The hive will, for the first time, experienced a novel form of data. Isolated, cascading system failures from internal sources it couldn't immediately comprehend. The perfect synchronization of the escort fleet shattered into dissonant panic. All teams, extract. Rodriguez's voice was sharp in their ears. The void jumpers launched themselves back into the void just as the fusion charges detonated. From the Indomitable's bridge, it looked like a silent string of firecrackers going off down the line of Corvin ships. Their hulls bulged, vented atmosphere, and went dark. The now defenseless freighters milled in confusion. Rodriguez didn't destroy them. He targeted their cargo holds with precision missiles, spilling their priceless contents into space. A glittering, frozen cloud of resources that would never feed the Corvin war effort. Message to Corvin High Command, Rodriguez dictated, watching the destruction. Humanity sends its regards. Every convoy you send, every resource you allocate to attack us will meet a similar end. The cost of this war is about to become unbearable for you. We suggest you recalculate. The Broken Chain campaign was a masterclass in psychological and economic warfare. For 3 months, Rodriguez's growing squadron of stealth-enabled raiders became ghosts in the machine of the Corvan Federation. They didn't seek fleet engagements. They attacked the soft underbelly, mining outposts, communication relays, and, most crucially, slave labor facilities. It was during the liberation of processing world Gamma-7 that the war's true nature shifted. The facility was a horror of biomechanical machinery where hundreds of beings from a dozen subjugated species were used as living components. The void jumpers fought through corridors slick with effluence to reach the central control node. There, they found not a Corvan overseer, but a single, trembling Corvan drone, its carapace a dull gray instead of the typical battle black. It cowered, its mandibles clicking in a frantic, irregular rhythm. It communicated not through the hive, but through a cracked terminal, typing in rudimentary Gal standard. Do not kill. I am defective. I am alone. This was 7 of thousands. A Corvan born with a fractured connection to the hive will, an individual consciousness screaming in the silent prison of a collective mind. She had hidden her madness for cycles, observing, thinking, yearning. Dr. Vasquez, reviewing the after-action footage, felt a shock that was not scientific but profoundly human. My God, they're not all the same. The hive can be broken.
Individuals cana marge.
7 was brought to a secret research annex on Luna. She was terrified, but also insatiably curious. Freed from the constant psychic noise of the hive, her mind was a torrent of questions and insights. Working with human and captured alien tech, she began to do the impossible. She built a device that could broadcast on the hive's own quantum-entangled frequencies, but carrying a new signal, not a command but a question. A seed of independent thought. Meanwhile, the political landscape was fracturing. The Zepyrian Empire watched humanity's guerrilla success with growing unease. Ambassador Velter's offers turned from condescending patronage to nervous negotiation. Emperor Luxandra, in his crystal palace, saw not just a military nuisance, but a dangerous meme. They fight without honor, without structure. They elevate the individual over the collective. This is a spiritual contagion. It must be contained or co-opted. The Nexari collective was having a full-scale economic crisis. Trade Prince Sex Mura stared at quarterly reports showing plummeting profits in the arms and resource sectors near human space. Humanity wasn't just fighting. It was making its enemies poorer. Worse, the refugees and defectors from Corvan space, including now a trickle of individualistic Corvans and disillusioned Zepyrian adepts, were bringing new ideas into the human sphere. Ideas about shared prosperity, open-source technology, and self-determination. Prince Yelthida, a younger, more observant trade prince, filed a startling memo. The human model of cooperative development, while ideologically repugnant, is demonstrating superior growth efficiency. Recommend analysis for potential replication under controlled circumstances. The Corvan response was, as expected, brute force. War leader Prime Vector assembled the Scythe of Retribution, an armada of 3,000 ships, the largest single mobilization since the Zepyrian Corvan War of Attrition 2 centuries prior. Its goal was not conquest, but extermination. It was to be a lesson written in the atomic ashes of Earth, a warning to any other galaxy that dared dream of individuality. On Earth, the moment of supreme crisis had arrived. Admiral Chun stood in the newly completed Strategic Command Citadel, a bunker buried beneath the Himalayas. The holographic tank displayed the terrible truth. The red swarm of the Scythe was mobilizing. The blue tendrils of Zepyrian fleets were repositioning, not to help, but to scavenge. The green nodes of Nexari traders were withdrawing to a safe distance to observe the market correction. They're coming, General David Kim stated, the words hanging in the sterile air. Our fleet now numbers 80 combat-effective vessels. Our colonies are still vulnerable. We cannot stop 3,000 ships in a stand-up fight. Then we don't fight their war, Chun said, her eyes fixed on the map. We make them fight ours. On a battlefield they cannot comprehend. She turned to Dr. Vasquez and the being now known as 7. Is it ready? Seven's mandibles clicked softly. Her individual mind, nourished by human collaboration, had achieved a profound breakthrough. The hive functions on resonant certainty. My defect is a dissonant frequency. We have built amplifiers. We can broadcast not a jamming signal, but a question. A seed of I. And the other project? The one from the joint labs. Vasquez nodded, pulling up schematics. The Zephyrian adepts we've been sheltering helped us understand their photonic lattice shields. The Nexary defectors showed us their quantum field manipulation for trade lane stability. The Free Corvins contributed their biocomputational networking. We've combined them. The schematic resolved into a strange, beautiful construct. A satellite-sized device that didn't project a shield, but a localized, stable bubble of altered spacetime. We're calling it a unity field. It doesn't block weapons. It makes the space inside it uninteresting to targeting systems and hostile to concentrated energy transfer. It's a defensive technology based on harmony, not deflection. Deploy it, Chen ordered. Around Earth, around every colony. And 7, begin your broadcast. Target the Corvin Armada. As the scythe of retribution translated into the Sol system, it found not a fearful planet, but a galaxy's strangest garden. Earth was shrouded in a gentle, shimmering haze, the unity field. Human colony worlds flickered with the same protective glow. And washing over the Corvin fleet was a signal, a whispering, subpsychic pulse, repeating a simple, corrosive concept. Who are you? The effect was not instantaneous, but as the massive fleet formed its killing sphere, reports began to filter to War Leader Prime Vector. Glitches, a destroyer breaking formation to investigate a sensor ghost. A weapons officer hesitating for a microsecond before firing a test shot that went wide. The flawless, synchronized will of the hive was developing static. Vector snarled, a physical sound of rage. Ignore the noise. All vessels target the human homeworld. Fire primary armaments. 3,000 ships charged their planet-cracking beams. The energy buildup would have been visible from Pluto. And then the impossible. From behind the moon, from the Lagrangian points, from the shadows of asteroids, ships emerged. But not just human ships. Sleek Zephyrian light cruisers, their running lights glowing in solidarity. Rugged, modified Corvin harvesters, their weapons repurposed, flying under the banner of the Free Swarm. And even a squadron of Nexary fast merchants, their cargo holds swapped for missile batteries, led by Prince Yltheta herself. Lord Zekon, a Zephyrian commander who had secretly been exchanging data with human scientists, hailed the Corvin Armada. War Leader Vector, you see before you not a target, but a community. Stand down. The old way ends here. Trade Prince Yltheta added, her mercantile tone gone, replaced by steel. The balance of power you represent is bad for long-term galactic GDP. We are investing in a new paradigm. The human fleet at its center was silent. They simply took up positions, intermingling with their alien allies, their formations a chaotic, beautiful tapestry of different designs and species, united by a single, unbroken line. Vector stared at the tactical display, his hive mind reeling. This was not warfare. This was heresy. This was every rule of galactic order broken at once. His armada still outnumbered the defenders 5-1. But the will to fight, the certain, unified will, was crumbling from within. The whispering question, who are you? Was finding purchase in thousands of semi-autonomous Corvin mines aboard his own ships that he gave the order to fire. The barrage that lanced out was the most devastating concentration of firepower ever assembled in the sector. It struck the unity field around Earth. And space rippled. The energy didn't explode or deflect. It was absorbed, diffused, and redistributed as harmless Cherenkov radiation across the entire field, making the planet's protective bubble shimmer like a vast aurora. The shields held. Admiral Chen's voice, calm and clear, broadcast on all frequencies. You have your answer, War Leader. You are the past. We are the future. and the future defends its own. What happened next was not a battle, but a dissolution. Across the Corvin Armada, the dissonance became critical. A squadron of cruisers powered down their weapons and declared for the free swarm. Whole segments of the fleet began to argue internally via the hive, creating psychic feedback loops of confusion. The perfect weapon of the hive had turned against itself, crippled by the very concept of choice. Vector, in a final act of defiant rage, ordered a suicide ramming maneuver against the Indomitable. Captain Rodriguez, watching the behemoth approach, didn't flinch. All Allied vessels, focus fire on its primary thrusters. Let's give him a push. A combined salvo from human railguns, Zephyrian energy lances, and Nexari kinetic batteries hammered the terror ship's engines, not to destroy it, but to alter its course. Vectoring helplessly, the pride of the Corvin fleet plowed into the barren moon of Callisto, a final, impotent impact that shook the solar system as a footnote, not an apocalypse. The scythe of retribution was broken, not by superior firepower, but by a superior idea. The three ancient galactic powers watched, stunned, as their monopoly on history ended. The Zephyrian Empire saw its doctrine of guided superiority shattered. The Nexari Collective saw its economy of controlled scarcity challenged by an economy of shared abundance. The Corvin Federation faced an existential crisis, its hive fragmenting into a chorus of newly independent voices as the Allied fleets secured the system. Admiral Chun looked at the hologram of Earth, safe within its shimmering field, surrounded by ships of 100 different designs. She thought of the lives lost, of the courage and the others. Their sacrifice had not been for a mere victory. It had been to purchase the unthinkable. A chance, she opened a channel, broadcasting to every world, every ship, every being that could hear. "The war you knew is over," she said, her voice echoing across the light years. "What begins now is something else. An experiment. A choice. You can cling to the old walls of empire and control and watch them turn to dust. Or you can step forward, as so many of you already have, and help us build something stronger. Not a hierarchy, but a network. Not an empire, but an alliance. The door is open." In the silence that followed her words, across 1,000 worlds, 1,000,000,000 minds, human, Zephyrian, Corvin, Nexari, and a dozen other species once thought insignificant, began to contemplate a question that had been unaskable for 800 years. The silence after the battle of soul was not the quiet of peace, but the profound, breathless hush of a universe holding its breath. The galaxy had witnessed the impossible. The trinity of ancient powers, the paternalist, the predator, and the profiteer, had been defied, not by a greater army, but by a radical, infectious idea. The broken chain was not just a supply line. It was the chain of cosmic destiny itself, and humanity had struck the first, resounding blow. But as the adrenaline of survival faded, a colder, more daunting reality set in on Luna Command. They had won a reprieve, not a victory. They had shattered a weapon, but not the hand that forged it. The old order was wounded, humiliated, and infinitely dangerous. And in the dark between the galaxies, something older than empires was beginning to stir. 3 standard years passed. On the surface, they were years of frantic, hopeful construction. The experiment Admiral Chun had announced became the Galactic Cohesion Initiative. Its capital was not a planet but Research Station Beacon 1, a stunning, collaborative marvel that orbited a pulsing neutron star. Its torus-shaped hull was a tapestry of technologies. Zephyrian photonic lattices formed its shimmering outer skin. Corvin biocomposite ganglia wove through its structural bones as self-repairing neural networks. Nexari quantum field stabilizers kept its artificial gravity in perfect harmony, and human modular design allowed it to grow, adapt, and breathe. It was a physical manifesto, a declaration that diversity was not a weakness to be managed, but a strength to be integrated. Within its luminous corridors, beings who had been taught to see each other as resources, slaves, or rivals now worked side by side. Dr. Elena Vasquez, now director of xenocultural synthesis, walked through the central arboretum, a forest of hybrid flora from a dozen worlds, with Lord Zekon at her side. The young Zepyrian's energy form, once a rigid pattern of imperial certainty, now flickered with dynamic, curious light. The efficiency metrics are illogical, Zekon said, his resonant voice thoughtful. By our old models, this many disparate decision-making nodes should lead to chaos and stagnation. Yet, our joint research velocity has increased by 1,400%. The project to harness neutron star radiation for clean power is decades ahead of any single species projection. That's because your old models measured control, not potential, Vasquez replied, watching a mixed team of human engineers and free Corvin technicians assemble a delicate sensor array. Chaos isn't the enemy of order. It's the raw material. Our chaos has rules: mutual respect, voluntary participation, and a shared goal. It's not an absence of structure. It's a more complex, more resilient one. Nearby, Seven of Thousands oversaw the Cohesion's central communication hub. Her defect was now her genius. Freed from the hive's monolithic consciousness, she had become a peerless architect of networked intelligence, designing systems that allowed individual minds to collaborate without subsuming their uniqueness. The whisper, the signal that had unstitched the Corvin armada, had evolved. It was now a gentle, ever-present background hum in Cohesion space. Not a command, but an invitation to connect, to question, to create. Yet, shadows gathered at the edges of this bright new dawn. The old powers had not vanished. They had retreated, and retreat for ancient empires is a strategic, not a surrender. In the lightless depths of a gas giant, the last loyalist fragment of the Corvin hive will, led by the fanatical warseer Krull, performed blasphemous rites, splicing their biology with scavenged technology, becoming something harder, colder, and more hateful, the Null Swarm. Their philosophy was a dark mirror of cohesion. Not unity, but erasure. They sought not to conquer other minds, but to silence them, to return the galaxy to a pure state of singular, unquestioning will. Their own, the Zepyrian Empire, was undergoing a silent, bitter civil war. A traditionalist faction, the Luminal Conclave, viewed the Cohesion as spiritual pollution. They began constructing absolution arrays, weapons designed not to destroy matter, but to cleanse it of disharmonious quantum patterns. A terrifyingly elegant way to sterilize a world of independent thought while leaving the building standing. Even within the Nexari Collective, a brutal corporate coup unfolded. Trade Prince Sex Mura, his profits eviscerated by the Cohesion's open-source economies, was overthrown by a cabal of ultra-capitalist directors. They created the Prophet Song, a mimetic weapon broadcast on subtrade frequencies that induced apathy and consumers' compliance, turning vibrant cultures into passive, productive markets. The Cohesion knew of these threats, but a greater mystery consumed their finest minds. Zekon, and the best human theorists had been decoding the final, fragmented records of the progenitors, the mythical first civilization. The data, pulled from a derelict artifact found by Captain Rodriguez on the edge of the galactic halo, told a story that froze the blood. The progenitors were not the first masters of the galaxy. They were the last survivors of a previous unified cycle, a cycle that ended not with a war, but with a harvest. The mathematics are clear and terrible, Zekon announced in a hushed council chamber on Beacon 1. A holographic star map swirled, showing not empires, but waves of extinction rolling across the galactic plane like tides, at intervals of approximately 50,000 years. A force from the intergalactic void. It does not conquer, consumes. It strips galaxies of complex energy signatures, of consciousness itself. The progenitors called it the hunger. Their final act was not a weapon, but an ark. A ship carrying the seeds of all life, launched into the deep void to escape. Admiral Chun, her face more granite than ever, studied the timelines. And the next predicted convergence window? Our best estimate, Seven clicked softly, her voice layered with dread, is 5 standard years, perhaps less. And the energy signatures from the null swarms experiments, the luminal conclave's arrays, the prophet song's transmissions, they are not just weapons. They are beacons. They are ringing the dinner bell. A grim understanding settled over the leadership. The petty wars of the old order were not just tragic. They were suicidal. In fighting each other, in clinging to their archaic forms of control, they were making the galaxy bright, loud, and tasty for the hunger. The first true test of this theory came from the null swarm. Krull, in his deranged quest for purity, had discovered a progenitor relic, a quantum resonator, and misused it, attempting to amplify the hive will to dominate the entire Corvin species. Instead, he sent a piercing, wrong-note shriek of psionic energy lancing out of the galaxy. 3 months later, long-range sensors at the Cohesion's edgeworld, Horizon's Reach, detected the scouts. They were not ships as any civilization understood them. They were voids, entities of twisted space-time and dark matter, appearing as rippling absences in the starfield. They moved with a terrible, patient purpose. A Cohesion science vessel, the Curiosity, sent to investigate, simply unraveled. Its matter decohered, its energy was siphoned, and its crew's consciousness vanished not with a scream, but with a silence that was infinitely worse. The Hunger's vanguard had arrived. Captain Rodriguez, now commanding the Cohesion's first integrated battle group, a fleet where human, Zepyrian, Free Corvin, and Nexary ships shared data links and tactical control in real time, was tasked with the response. His flagship, the UES Unity, was the embodiment of the new philosophy. A human frame with Zepyrian heart, Corvin nerves, and Nexary skin. The engagement at Horizon's Reach was a lesson in cosmic horror. Energy weapons passed through the voids harmlessly. Kinetic projectiles distorted and missed. The void's only attack was a stillness field, a zone where physics itself seemed to give up. Ships caught within it lost power, cohesion, and life, dissolving into inert particles. Rodriguez, watching a brave Zepyrian light cruiser flicker and die, felt a familiar, cold fury. But this enemy could not be outthought with mere tactics. Fall back by alternating microjumps, he ordered. They track predictable energy. We need to be unpredictable. And we need a new language. Retreating, he had the Unity's mixed science team analyze every scrap of data. The answer, when it came, was not from a weapon designer, but from Seven and a Nexary harmonic theorist. They are not attacking matter, the Nexary theorist hummed, her tentacles weaving complex waveforms in the air. They are attacking the song of matter, the quantum resonance that defines existence in this universe. The null swarm's broadcast was a discordant note. They are drawn to discord. Seven's compound eyes gleamed. Then we do not fight discord with more discord. We fight it with a symphony. The plan was audacious, desperate, and the only one they had. It was called Operation Galactic Chord. The Cohesion would not hide its worlds. It would not build a bigger gun. It would use the entire network of its civilization. Every colony, every ship, every communications array, even the minds of its willing citizens as an instrument. They would generate a unified, harmonious quantum resonance field, a song of being, so coherent, so complex, and so alive that it would be indigestible to an entity that fed on chaos and discord. They would make the galaxy taste wrong. To the Hunger, preparations were a nightmare of logistics and faith. On Earth, millions meditated in synchronized patterns. Their collective brainwave activity fed into planetary resonators. On Zepyrian worlds, energy beings orchestrated massive photonic harmonies. Free Corvins used their innate psychic links, not for control, but to form a choir of individual voices raised in unison. Nexary trade lanes were repurposed as conduction wires for the song. The old powers saw this not as salvation, but as ultimate heresy. The null swarm attacked a key resonator array in the Lyra system. The luminal conclave attempted to hijack the Zepyrian harmonic grid to broadcast their cleansing frequency. The prophet song directors tried to sell protective resonance at exorbitant rates, creating damaging interference. The Cohesion's military, now truly integrated, fought a holding action on 100 fronts. Rodriguez's battle group executed lightning strikes against null swarm hive ships. Zikon led Zepyrian loyalists in brutal civil war against the Conclave's absolution fleets. Yltheta's merchant marines used their knowledge of Nexary networks to sabotage the Prophet Song transmitters. It was during the brutal, close-quarters battle to retake the Lyra array that the true power of their unity was forged in fire. Rodriguez's unity was boarded by null swarm cybernetic drones. In the chaotic fight through the ship's corridors, a human marine, her legs severed by a chitinous blade, was dragged to safety by a Zepyrian energy being who solidified himself into a shield, taking the killing blow meant for her. A free Corvin, fighting beside them, used its intimate knowledge of hive physiology to find the weak point in a drone's armor, allowing a human soldier to deliver the killing shot. They were not allies covering each other. They were parts of a single organism defending itself. They held Lyra. They secured the harmonics. But time was running out. The main body of the hunger arrived. It was not a fleet, but a tide, a wave of nothingness that blotted out the stars at the galactic rim. Worlds on the edge went silent, their songs cut off mid-note. The Cohesion's leadership watched the wave of static advance on the main hologram in Beacon 1's command center. Despair, cold and heavy, threatened to swallow the room. Admiral Chun stood. She was not a young woman. The weight of species, of history, of futures unborn, rested on her shoulders. She looked at the faces around her, human, Zepyrian, Corvin, Nexary, and others. She saw fear, but she also saw something else, something that had not existed in the galaxy before them. Trust. They are coming for the song, she stated, her voice quiet but carrying to every corner of the station, broadcast to every world. They think it is the sound we are making. They are wrong. The song isn't something we produce. It is what we are. It is the sum of every choice to cooperate instead of dominate. Every act of compassion over control. Every moment one being reached out to understand another. It is the resonance of life refusing to be simple, to be silent, to be alone. She activated the final sequence. All networks to full capacity. All minds focus not on defense but on connection, on memory, on hope, on the friend beside you. Let them hear what life really sounds like. Across the Cohesion, 1 trillion minds turned inward, not in retreat, but in a supreme act of shared attention. The soldier remembered the alien who saved her. The scientist remembered the breakthrough born of a crazy idea from a different world. The parent on a colony world held their child and dreamed of a future without fear. The harmonic generators, from the massive planetary arrays to the tiny implants in individual beings, reached critical synchronization. And the galaxy sang. It was not a sound heard by ears. It was a vibration in the quantum foam, a standing wave of coherent consciousness that rippled out from 1,000,000 worlds. To the sensory apparatus of the hunger, it was no longer looking at a scattering of tasty, discordant morsels. It was facing a single, brilliant, defiant chord of existence. A complexity so dense, so interwoven, so full of paradox and beauty that it was like a flame to the void's ice. The tidal wave of nothing hesitated. Where it touched the expanding field of the song, it did not advance. It conflicted. The hunger's method was to unravel, to simplify. The song was unsimplifiable. It was a puzzle with no edges, a story with no end. To consume it would be to consume itself. On the Unity, Rodriguez watched sensors go wild. The voids, they're recoiling. They're not taking damage, they're confused. The stillness fields are collapsing where the song is strongest. The harmony was not a weapon. It was a state of being. And the hunger, an entity that existed only to reduce being to nothing, found it inedible. With a silent, gravitational shudder that bent light across the sector, the tide began to recede. The voids blinked out, one by one, their purpose thwarted. The harvest had been cancelled. The silence that followed was different. It was the silence of a storm past, of a breath finally released. On Beacon 1, there were no cheers. There were tears, embraces between beings of light and flesh and chitin, and a quiet, trembling at WIN the following days. As damage was assessed and the last echoes of the song faded, the reports came in. The old powers had not been spared. Isolated, discordant, they had been easy prey. The null swarm's strongholds were empty, silent tombs. The luminal conclave's crystal citadels stood pristine and lifeless, their inhabitants cleansed into oblivion. The Prophet Song's directors were found in their luxurious suites, their minds hollowed out, having consumed their own poisonous propaganda until nothing was left. Their philosophies had been their doom. Control, purity, greed, these were simple, digestible concepts for the hunger. The Cohesion's beautiful, messy, cooperative chaos had been its salvation. Months later, on the observation deck of the Unity, Admiral Chun stood with Rodriguez, Vasquez, Zecon, Seven, and Yilthita. The repaired galaxy shimmered before them, its stars no longer just points of light, but notes in a silent, enduring melody. "What now?" Rodriguez asked, the eternal soldier's question after the last battle. Zecon's light pulsed warmly. "Now we explore the song, not as a weapon but as a philosophy, a way of being. We have barely begun to understand what we become when we truly listen to each other." Seven clicked thoughtfully. "The hive will is broken, but the Corvin people are not. We have a new story to write, as individuals, together." Yilthita's tentacles wove a contented pattern. "The Prophet Song is dead, but trade is not. We have learned that the most valuable commodity is not what you keep scarce, but what you help flourish." The Cohesion's economic models are fascinatingly robust. Dr. Vasquez smiled, looking at her friends, her family from 100 different worlds. "We set out to prove we weren't food for empires. We ended up proving we were the architects of a new kind of universe." Admiral Chun placed a hand on the cool crystal of the viewport. She saw not just stars, but the memory of the harmony, the moment a galaxy had chosen to be a chorus instead of a battlefield. The war was over. The true work, the endless, beautiful work of building that chorus into a civilization that would echo through the eons, was just beginning. "Now," she said softly, her voice full of a hard-won peace, "we learn to live in the music we've made." And as their ships turned toward home, carrying the architects of the impossible back to the worlds they had saved, the galaxy, for the first time in its long and violent history, did not feel like a dark, cold void. It felt, in every quantum thread of its being, like a promise finally kept.